Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Policki, and I have a special guest with me. Jackson Lefebvre is in for Jacob Liberta on this episode, and we're going to be talking Timberwolves, which is Jackson's number one team. They've been on a bit of a slide lately as they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games, albeit against pretty dang good teams that have been hot in this recent stretch, coming down the stretch to the playoffs here. So, Jackson, let's get right into it, man. I mean, should we be worried about the Wolves dropping some games here? The Toronto game, especially Toronto and Boston, I think were both pretty concerning. Just the lack of compete basically in the second half of those games. I guess the Celtics game was pretty much over at halftime with how much they were down. But what's kind of been your thoughts? I mean, you've watched almost every game this entire season. You've been that committed to this team. What are your thoughts on the way the Wolves have looked lately?
It's a little concerning, just because, especially on the defensive side of how we've looked, especially recently these past 4 or 5 games. But I'm not overall. I'm still bullish on this team. So I think we just got to get in the playoffs and see what happens. It looks like we're going to be the 7th spot after all. It's pretty much like a 99% chance we're going to be the 7th spot now. So we just got to beat the Clippers, 1 game at home, and then get in that probably Grizzlies series. And then I think things will change a little bit. Our schedule has really gotten hard lately, just against these really solid Eastern Conference teams. The Celtics and Toronto, we just don't match up with them great anyways.
Right.
So I think, and there are some concerning elements that I think need to be addressed. But overall, I'm still, bullish on this season.
I mean, overall, without a doubt, this season's been a success. I mean, they've completely blown over the over-under total that Vegas had set before the season. I think it was 34.5 or something like that. So they're sitting at 43 wins right now. I'm guessing they'll win at least a couple more games to get them to 45. So definitely a success. They're going to be in the playoffs one way or the other, unless they completely bomb this play-in and lose both games, which I have a really hard time seeing, as the Lakers can barely hang on to that 10th spot. I mean, they might get bounced by the Spurs. So then if you do lose to the Clippers, you're either playing the Pelicans or the Spurs, and you're a way better team than them. So you should beat one of those 2 teams. But the Clippers game is getting a little more scary now that Paul George is back. He dropped over 30 points in his first game back, led a crazy comeback against the Jazz. So that Clippers team kind of scares me. But at the same time, I'd kind of like to see them obviously I want the Wolves to beat them in that play-in. The Clippers would be the 8 playing the Suns as the 1. And if you remember the chippy playoff series last year where Pat Bev was in the middle of it with the Clippers and the Suns, it'd be kind of cool to see that rematch. But yeah, getting back to the Wolves, if they get the 7 seed, I think that's kind of been the Grizzlies has really been our ideal matchup for the Wolves. Throughout the second half of the season, we kept saying, well, if we can maybe get the 6 seed and the Grizzlies were the 3 seed, well, now the Grizzlies shot past the Warriors. So it's looking likely that would be the matchup if we do win the play-in game. So I think that would be encouraging, because I think we could at least take them to, hopefully 6, maybe 7 games, and maybe even steal the series. Who knows? But I think in order to do that, we're going to have to get a lot more consistent play out of D'Angelo Russell. What are your thoughts on the way he's been playing lately? And just, do you think it's a confidence issue? Do you think it's maybe he's a little banged up? Maybe he's not trying to push so hard. It's, at the end of the season. What are your thoughts on the way he's been playing?
I mean, he's been playing really poorly lately, and it's been frustrating. And he's had like his worst 4-game stretch of the season so far, and then he plays one of his worst games of the season last night against Toronto. This game last night was supposed to be his get D'Lo going game. And right. Chris Finch even mentioned that, I think, in his post game. I watched a little bit of that post game, and he said that that we were trying to get him going early, but the guy's thing is, the guy's just simply not making shots.
Right.
He went I think 3 for 16 last night.
It was something
ridiculous. It was something ridiculous. I believe it was 3 for 16. And the guy also, if you notice, when he catches the ball, he does his fake every time, and it's this really over exaggerated long fake, and whenever he shoots it now, it's he has to be wide open, and he's just not shooting confidently, it looks like. And I don't know how to fix it. The thing is he is a pro. He's been around the league for, I think this is his 7th season now.
Yeah.
And so I'm not that concerned. I think come playoffs, he's going to get it going a little bit. And he's still playing some pretty decent defense. In his kind of like roam around like safety role they have for him, where he doesn't really play anyone on ball. He just kind of
Right.
roams. He kind of does like the Draymond Green on the Warriors role.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's been one of the main issues for this team recently is, I mean, we played really tough opponents that play really good D. And also D'Angelo Russell, our second highest paid player on the team, has been having his worst stretch of the year. And also we're really missing Malik Beasley and Jaden McDaniels, especially Jaden McDaniels, I think, just because he really, his defense and his length, I think, really makes up for a lot of mistakes that this team makes. Because this team is young and it's fun and it's talented, but we're not also the best X's and O's type. Like, we don't really, there's a lot of loopholes still that with this team. So I think Jaden McDaniels really covers up a lot of those. So we're missing him. And then Malik Beasley, he's been one of the best shooters, 3-point shooters in the NBA. I think the best one in the past 2 months since the All-Star break, at least. He's shooting like 46% from three. So we're missing that as well. So get those guys healthy again. It sounds like Malik Beasley is kind of day to day now, and Jaden McDaniels is back to basketball. He's back to practicing now. I believe that they announced that yesterday. So just get him back for the playoffs. But man, that Clippers game is going to be big. Because if we can win that Clippers game and we just get in a series with the Grizzlies and it's fun and exciting, and if we end up losing it, I'm going to be okay. Get better out in the offseason, and let's roll next year.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm glad you brought up McDaniels and Beasley, because those are, I mean, by default, those are your fourth and fifth best players, I guess, depending what you think of like Patrick Beverley or something. But in terms of just an all-around contribution, I mean, Beasley's three-point shooting can't be replaced by anybody on this team. I mean, probably the next closest in terms of like volume three-point shooting is D'Lo, and he's shooting horribly right now. Cat's the best three-point shooter on the team, and he just doesn't take enough three-point shots really to make up for that. So, yeah, having McDaniels out with that defense, I mean, that's so massive. And his offensive game was really starting to turn around too, post All-Star break. He was cutting to the basket a lot more, pulling up in the mid-range. He was doing a lot of things well. So, yeah, it's tough right now, but you have to remember they're banged up. Like Vando's been battling injuries, for a good chunk of the second half of the season. I'm sure
Ant's injured.
Yeah, Ant's got the bad knee. Yep, that's a big one. Even though he's kind of starting to play better lately too, at least in terms of the box score. You said you've noticed, though, it still looks like he kind of has heavy legs.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm more concerned about that than the D'Lo thing. Like, I don't even care about anything. Just get that man healthy and confident and playing well. That should be the top priority over anything, in this franchise in terms of long-term success. And the guy just, I don't know, like I was watching him earlier in the year and I was saying like, this guy's the next coming of Michael Jordan. And I still think, I mean, granted, I was drinking the Wolves Kool-Aid heavily at times, which is kind of funny with this fan base this year. Like if we once we win, you go on Twitter and it's just freaking celebrating, and then when we lose on Twitter, you go to the comments and it's just like, I'm no longer a Timberwolves fan.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So this fan base is just, I think it's just a really neurotic fan base, just because of all the failure over the past 2 decades that we just don't really know what to think. But yeah, in terms of Ant, he from what I saw in earlier this year with him dunking, he had that crazy dunk over that guy in the Heat, in the Heat game. And man, it just seems like he has these heavy legs. And when he's kind of like jogging up the court too, you can just see he's carrying, like his knees are just seem heavy.
Right.
And that could be a fitness thing. I don't know. I think the guy just needs to really work on his nutrition and his fitness more this offseason, work on his craft more, and then hopefully he's back. But I mean, granted, we have a freaking playoff series coming up, so hopefully the man is okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing too, is like there's only 5 games left, and I guess I got to pull up the standings here quick. We're very close to clinching that 7 seed. Let me
we haven't clinched it yet? I thought that we pretty much clinched that.
Let's see. We are up 5.5 games on the Clippers. I don't know if it's clinched. I guess it must be. It must be close.
I mean, we're going to be the 7th seed.
The Clippers have 6 games left, so I think technically they could somehow tie us. But Yeah, we're basically the 7th seed. So I wonder at this point if you almost consider starting to rest guys like Vando. I think
Oh,
really could use a couple games off. Ant probably could too. Just give those knees a break. Um, obviously Finch wants to keep the guys rolling into the playoffs, and I don't blame him for that. But I mean, maybe like the next 2 games, like the Denver game's not really going to mean anything at this point, although it's still possible we could catch them. Just rest half your guys for the next couple games and then play them the last 3 games of the season, try to get them ramped up. I don't know if that's the right move or not, or maybe just limit their minutes or something. But yeah, I think it's important to be fresh going into the playoffs because I mean, you and I and Liberta will be at that play-in game, and they're gonna have to bring it 100% because when Paul George was playing earlier this season, the Clippers absolutely smoked us all 3 games we played against them, and I'm kind of worried about that being the case again. Come that play-in game, and even if you're the 8th seed, you don't want to have to go into the playoffs facing the Phoenix Suns because we saw them a couple weeks ago, and I mean they basically just ran away with the game in the second half. I mean they were just that's a team that knows how to win, and they just completely outclassed the Timberwolves in every single way. Albeit that game was just a complete gong show from the refs too. But
we played pretty well in that game too, which goes to show you how we do not want Phoenix. We want the Grizzlies, especially. I want a young matchup between Ant and Ja. I think that just be and we're kind of similar franchises. I just think that'd be really fun. And some people are like, oh, we might want the Warriors because they're struggling more. No one on their team can defend Cat. The thing is, we're not going to win the championship this year, so give me a more fun series with the Grizzlies. That's my mindset.
No, 100%. It's because it's all about growth, and like you said, the Grizzlies are a super young team as well. I think they made the play-in last year, if I remember correctly, but they didn't get into the actual playoffs. And so looking at it here, that could be a good opportunity for a Grizzlies team that could still make some mistakes because they're still young, albeit they've played amazing basketball this season. The Wolves might have an opportunity to steal a few games, potentially steal the series if the Grizzlies really don't play well. And, every single game you can play from here on out is going to be important in terms of building for the following seasons and for the future of this team because I mean, the core is already in place. You got Ant and Cat for sure, McDaniels for sure. D'Lo is going to be around next year. After that, it remains unknown. We've kind of talked about it, and we could probably save this for another day about whether or not you should extend him this offseason. I don't think either of us really think you should extend him yet. Kind of make him prove it again next season. So you kind of have your main core in place of young guys, and then it's just all about adding to that, in the upcoming free agency and the upcoming draft and all that stuff. So in terms of this year, like you said, it's already been a great year. They've massively improved. They have a fantastic coach. And now it's just about keep building for the future because at this point, it's all house money, I think, with the Wolves.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to go back to that point you made about us resting guys. It's a kind of a fine line because I think we should rest some guys maybe, or maybe just don't play them as much, especially we need to make sure Ant is good to go. But another thing is I'm a little bit worried about if we get Jaden McDaniels back, is he going to have that same confidence that he had, the past couple months? Because the guy was money from the corners on that catch and shoot 3. And when he was catching it, he wasn't thinking about it at all. He was just going up with it. Earlier in the season, the guy was kind of thinking more. So these are some of the things I just worry about, just when guys, aren't in the mix for a couple weeks, or I mean, granted, we're only going to rest maybe some guys for a couple days, so it's not going to be that huge, but there's a fine line between getting these guys, 100% ready, like health wise, and also, they're still, in the same rhythm. So I just hope we get our guys, somewhat healthy, and we can at least, put on like a true performance in the playoffs and give it our all, and there's no excuses.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's actually a good point. I didn't really think about like Beasley missing a few games here and McDaniels being out for at least a few weeks. Makes you wonder how rusty they'll be when they come back because they really don't have much time to get acclimated. Beasley, it'll probably be easier because he's only missed a couple games. But like you said, McDaniels, that's his shot making is almost critical when he's playing because, I mean, he's usually one of the better offensive options when he's out there on the court when he's coming off the bench. So that's definitely going to be something interesting to track. But there's all sorts of storylines with this team, but overall, I think it's just all about seeing improvement. We saw a ton of it so far this season. I think no matter what happens in the playoffs, in the end, we'll be happy with the way the season turned out. maybe the playoffs turn into a bummer, but at least there will be some excitement going into the offseason, seeing what they could potentially do with this roster and where they can improve. And going into next season, the expectations will be even higher. So do you have any other final thoughts on the Wolves as they're coming down the stretch here before we take off?
It's real. I mean, really, that Clippers game is going to be so critical because I think, sadly, even though we had such an awesome year, if we don't win that Clippers game and we get a 1-8 against the Suns, it's just going to be it's just going to be a big downer. I hate to say it. So that Clippers game is really going to be critical. And also, let's freaking open up those black tarps up above in that upper bowl. You see me? I tweeted at Mark Laurie.
I did see
yesterday.
That. Yep.
I said, let's take off those black tarps and let's pack this thing. I mean, we'll need it. We'll need tarps that are rocking. And
for sure,
me, you, and the bird will be there. And I guarantee you, we're gonna be shouting and we're gonna be, going nuts because we need to with Paul George being back. So
yeah,
that's gonna be an awesome game. Let's win it. Let's have an awesome series against the Grizzlies, and let's make that let's make that the Twins' go-to rival for years to come, because I think they could be.
Heck yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said, man. That's fantastic. I agree. Open up the upper bowl, just pack it full in there. Granted, you probably don't have the best view way up there in those nosebleeds, but yeah, pack the place. Let's get it rowdy and let's beat the freaking Clippers and play the Grizzlies. So
let's do it.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. Thanks for filling in for Liberta. Greatly appreciate it. I know you love to talk Timberwolves, so it was great to have you on. And yeah, that'll do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Please be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and leave your comments below. Are you worried about the Timberwolves? What would you like to see improved upon before the playoffs begin? And are you worried about Beasley and McDaniels potentially being rusty coming in for the playoffs? So until next time, thanks for watching.